So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto Was Trained by Goku and Vegeta Become the Z Fighter. So let's start the series. An elderly man with darkly tanned skin and bushy white hair pored over his notes, with a look of contemplation on his face. This man's name is Dr. Gero of the now disbanded Red Ribbon Army. For nearly a decade he'd been plotting his revenge on the person responsible for the evil army's fall, Son Goku. The boy had taken down the army when he had been only 12 years old, a feat that the kingdoms of the world had failed to accomplish. The shame of that defeat spurred the doctor on, hoping to find a way to destroy the boy, now man, and claim the world for his own. His research largely focused on the creation of androids, human-like robots with powers far exceeding those of an average human. At first, he'd been working with robotic-based androids, but after 16 separate failures, Gero decided to take a different approach: human-based androids. He searched all the major cities and finally found possible test subjects: twin punk teens, a boy and a girl, who were living on the streets and showed an aptitude towards both survival and fighting. While Gero would have preferred using a professional martial artist, it would have been much more difficult and time-consuming to take one. Finally, he went through with his plans and took the two teens off the street. However, there was an unexpected complication. Apparently the twins had a younger brother, a spunky little thing that fought off the bigger and stronger adult to get his siblings back. Gero was able to subdue the boy and decided to take him as well. Now the question was what to do with the boy. He considered making him an android as well, but that idea was not feasible. The child was too young to survive the augmentation process, being only 10 to 11 years of age. However, he didn't want that raw determination and strength to go to waste. Then, the metaphorical lightbulb went off in the man's head. Ruffling through his old papers, Dr. Gero pulled out a file titled Project Genome. The old man gave a menacing grin as he looked through the file. Project Genome was something he had started a few years ago as the predecessor to Project Cell. The idea was he would take the DNA of several of the Earth's mightiest fighters, Goku, Vegeta, Frieza, etc., and create the ultimate body. Then he would implant a brain into the body that was from an already skilled fighter, after being properly modified to follow his command, of course, creating a perfect warrior. However, every subject he convinced to do the test couldn't handle the strain and became little more than a vegetable. This is what led him to begin Project Cell, which had the same basic principle as Genome but created the being from scratch, brain and all. This would have been guaranteed to create the perfect being. But it was a slow and tedious process, which was why he left that up to the computers to do. Genome, however, would take only a fraction of the time to make. Perhaps 17 and 18's brother could bring it to fruition. With that, Gero ready to prepare his latest test subject. Several years later. Where am I? What happened? A young voice thought as the mind behind the voice drifted through darkness. I remember going out to get some food. And Lapis and Lazuli, too, were gonna go find someplace for us to sleep. Then, what? The voice struggled to remember. He mentally flinched in pain. There were new things in his mind, things that were both telling him things as well as trying to block most of what he already knew. It was like a mental game of tug-of-war, the intrusion against his mind. At first, it felt like the intruder would win, but then the owner of the voice started to overpower it, pulling on nearly unnatural amounts of willpower. Instead, the boy, for the owner of the voice was male, took the intruder and used it to his will. He stopped the intruder from making him forget, but he took the knowledge for himself. The child learned of things, of Dr. Gero and the Red Ribbon Army, of Son Goku and his friends, about ki and fighting and what was done to himself. His body was no longer his, not the one he was born with at any rate. The body, his mind and soul now occupied an artificial being created from the cells of the planet's strongest fighters in the hopes to make him into the ultimate weapon. He learned what he was capable of what all moves he could use and how to use them. He also learned that the part of the intrusion he overcame was programming Dr. Gero had used to try and make him his obedient slave. It was only due to his strong determination that he was able to overcome it. Gero, we'll pay for this. I need to get out of here and find Big Sis and Bro. He thought strongly. Sure, their lives weren't great before their abduction, orphaned at a young age and forced to fend for themselves in the slums of the city. But it was their lives to live, and this old fossil decided to take that away from them simply for his petty revenge. He wouldn't stand for it. Then he found his body started to get lighter, which could only mean one thing. He was waking up. Scene shift. Dr. Gero grinned maliciously as he prepped 17 and 18 for awakening. While his initial plan to take himself and 19 to dispose of the Z fighters hadn't gone according to plan, he was more than sure the twin androids would crush the annoying insects. Granted, when he'd first tried awakening the two, they had been less than cooperative. Apparently the programming that was to erase their previous memories hadn't fully taken, erasing only certain aspects of their previous lives such as their names, and it left the ungrateful brats feeling resentful of his generosity. So he placed the two into stasis until it was time to awaken them again, and hopefully their programming would take this time. Granted, it was a risk, but one he was willing to take, though now that he thought of it, it may be beneficial to start Project Genome as well. While he was untested, the doctor was sure if the androids didn't kill the pathetic warrior's genome would. Turning to the human-sized tube located on the far end of the room, Gero pressed the release button. The liquid in the tube filtered out and the glass lowered, showing the being within. The figure stood roughly the size of 17 and 18, around 5 feet 4 inches, and was human-shaped. However, while the being had some human characteristics, it was largely insect in nature. The body was covered in an exoskeleton that was orange in color, while parts like the shoulders were black, as were the long wings extending from its back. On its mouth was a leathery beak-like mouthpiece, while there were horn-like protrusions on both sides of the biogem located on the top of his head. The visible flesh was chalk white on the hands, feet, and face. The feet only had 3 long toes, 2 on the front and 1 on the back, while the hands had 5 human-like fingers. All digits had small, sharp black nails. Finally, on his chest was tattooed the Red Ribbon Army's logo. Genome's eyes snapped open as the last of the liquid fell off its body, showing clear blue eyes. 3. Genome stepped down from the pedestal he was on silently, staring at his body in what looked like contemplation. The scientist stepped forward, a triumphant grin present. Ah, Genome, so glad to see you awake. I was unsure at first if you'd be able to fully awaken, but it seems that there were no complications. Now we must wait for your siblings to awake as well. You have work to do. Genome remained silent as he stopped inspecting his body and looked to Gero, an unreadable look on his face. Just then, the 2 pods that were activated hissed open. The first to open showed a young man that had black hair, an orange bandana tied around his neck, a black t-shirt over a white long sleeve, ripped jeans held up by a gun belt, long green socks and blue shoes. The other is a girl with blonde hair done similar to the boys, with a long-sleeved black and white striped shirt with a blue vest on top, black pants, and brown boots. They looked very similar to each other besides this, and they both had piercing blue eyes, gold hoop earrings, and finally a red ribbon logo on their shirts. The 2 androids exchanged glances and noticed the remote held in Gero's hands, the very same that could deactivate them. They then noticed the stoic-looking Genome but decided to focus on the matter at hand. Both androids give respectful greetings to the doctor, which leaves him mildly surprised but pleased that it looked as though their programming finally took. He then proceeded to tell them that there were powerful fighters at the door that had already destroyed Android 19 and crippled the man-turned-android himself. 17 spoke. It will be our pleasure, Doctor. But first, he turned and pointed at Genome before continuing. Who's the bug man? Gero smirked and said, that is Project Genome. He is a bioandroid I created shortly after you two. In some ways his power could easily rival your own, so I'm confident you can eradicate the vermin outside with no difficulty. 17 scoffed. Yeah right, Doc, you made sure I was your strongest creation, so I'm betting this guy's a pushover. He then looked over to Genome and gave a challenging grin. What do ya say, bug boy? Wanna go around and see who's stronger? Gero got irritated at this and stepped forward. That's enough, 17. I didn't awaken you all to have a childish brawl in my lab, so go out there and, huh? He finished with a grunt of confusion as the remote he was holding was suddenly swiped by a now smirking 18. Turning to the blonde girl, Gero fumed. 18, what are you doing? Give me that this instant. Still smirking, 18 crushed the remote as one would a soda can. 18. Gero cried out in anger and a bit of panic. Just then, the door to the lab was blasted off its hinges. After the smoke cleared, an assorted group of fighters stood in the doorway. The bald monk Krillin, the Triclops Tien, the Namekian Piccolo, the Scion Prince Vegeta, and his time-traveling son Trunks, the latter of whom was staring at the group of androids in horror. Tien turned to Trunks and asked, So, are these the androids you mentioned? Trunks gulped and said, Why yeah, that's them, although I don't know what that bug thing is. Vegeta snorted. Who cares, they'll all fall just the same. Dr. Gero meanwhile was cursing up a storm. This was literally the worst possible scenario. The Z fighters, all of whom were stronger than his initial calculations predicted, were at his doorstep, and 2 of his creations were obviously rebelling. Just like that it hit him. Turning to the bioandroid, Gero cried out, "Genome! Destroy them all!" However, the bug-like warrior just watched him impassively. Desperately, Gero once again cried out, "Genome! As your creator I command you to take out all these pests at once. Obey me. My name isn't Genome." He, for it was the voice of a young boy he spoke with, said quietly, "What was that? Stop dawdling, Genome, and destroy them, you useless prototype." Gero yelled almost hysterically. Genome's eyes flashed dangerously as a scowl adorned his beak-like mouth, and he spoke in an angry roar. "I said, my name isn't Genome, you old fossil." With that, he drew his arm back and made a slashing motion, causing a narrow wave of ki to shoot out like a guillotine. The wave caught the surprised doctor under the chin, loping his head clean off. This action caught everyone off guard, with only 17 and 18 being able to mask their surprise. Gero's head bounced along the ground until it landed in front of the Z fighters. Gero's head croaked out, "You miserable brats! I created you, and this is how you repay me?" In a motion almost too fast to follow, 17 leapt into the air and came down hard on the man's head, ending the scientist's life. Smirking, the male android straightened up and turned to the bioandroid. "Looks like I misjudged you, Bugman. Looks like you're alright after all," he said idly as he walked back over to his sister. "Don't call me that," said Bugman, snapped back. But unlike with Gero, his tone wasn't biting. "And don't call me Genome either. My name is Naruto Uzumaki." "I'd have figured you'd realize that by now, even though I look different, bro." 18 looked amused and said, "Hey, you seem chatty all of a sudden, and what's with that familiar tone? Neither of us have ever met as far as I'm concerned. What kind of name is Naruto anyway? Genome sounds way better than Fishcake anyway." The now named Naruto looked to the girl in confusion. "Do you not remember?" He asked hesitantly. Before either sibling could respond, Vegeta finally lost what little patience he had. "Enough of this foolishness," he yelled before sending out a strong blast of ki at the group. Acting quickly, Naruto moved in front of the blast. He knew that none of the androids would be hurt by the blast, but he wanted to try one of his new body's functions. The ki attack connected, but instead of exploding like it normally would, the energy seemed to be absorbed into Naruto's skin. As this was happening, Naruto felt a satisfying rush of power as his muscles momentarily swelled to the size of a bodybuilder's before compressing back down to normal. 5. Letting out a content sigh, Naruto then narrowed his eyes at the self-proclaimed prince of all science. "Do you mind? We're in the middle of a conversation here, you spiky-haired jackass." Naruto growled. As said spiky-haired jackass fumed, Krillin panicked. "Watch out, guys! That guy can absorb energy as well." After giving the monk a look that said, "No shit, Sherlock," the bioandroid turned to the other 2 and said, "Come on, let's go somewhere quiet. I think the 3 of us are going to have a lot to discuss." The twins looked at each other before 17 shrugged. Why not? Might kill some time, then maybe we can go after Goku for some fun." "Hold up," 18 said as she noticed the third pod in the room with the number 16 on the cover. "I want to wake this guy up. If Gero thought keeping him locked up while letting us free was a good idea, I'd bet we'd get along with this guy just fine." The 2 boys had no problem with that and gave her the go-ahead, but one member of the Z fighters strongly disagreed with her decision-making. "If they let that android free, it will be the end of all of us," Trunks cried before going to Super Saiyan and firing an even larger ki blast than his father with a shout of, "Nuh!" Fortunately, Trunks was able to think clearly even in his panic, and aimed his blast far away from the energy-absorbing Naruto, instead aiming for 18 herself as she got ready to unlock the pod. The wave detonated in an explosive force, causing the lab around them to go up in a giant fireball. When the smoke started to clear, the lab was nothing more than a pile of rubble with the Z fighters looking at it within a safe distance. However, as the rest of the smoke cleared, it showed Naruto, 17, and 18 were unharmed and that the pod containing 16 was being held by the blonde girl. "This is going to be harder than I thought," Tien muttered as he watched the 3 creations hover over the destroyed lab. After the 4th Shinobi War, Naruto dies from his injuries but not before bringing peace to the elemental nations. He does this by using Azura mode to absorb the remaining negative emotions from the planet into himself. This in turn causes his soul to go into a dormant state where it seals up the negative energy away from the world. This mutates Naruto's soul, and eventually it finds itself drawn into a large gathering of energy, which turns out to be the formation of the Dragon Balls. Years pass, and as the negative energy, still bound by Naruto's goodness, grows with each passing wish, it eventually breaks free when it gets too much for the Dragon Balls to handle, forming one of the Shadow Dragons. However, with Naruto's good soul still bound to it, the dragon actually becomes good as well as a result and joins with the Z fighters. Also, due to Naruto's soul being an anchor for the dragons, they don't need the Dragon Ball attached to exist. This is where the story diverges. 1. The dragon is Naturon Shiran, brought about by wishing those killed by King Piccolo back to life. In canon it was to revive those killed by Majin Vegeta, but I don't want to wait for the freaking Buu saga to start this idea. Like Naturon, Naruto can absorb bodies to become stronger and gain new attacks. However, Naruto won't use this as a cure-all solution to his fights, only as a last resort. For example, if he absorbs the body of a mole like canon Naturon did, Naruto will actually train in that form until he has it mastered, only switching bodies if there is no alternative. He'd even train his wimpy original form so he can actually do damage when not absorbing someone. He'd show up during the 23rd martial arts tournament in order to challenge Piccolo. He winds up fighting and beating Shin/Kami as well as Piccolo, but ties with Goku. Naruto offers to absorb Piccolo to keep him out of trouble, but Goku, sensing Piccolo isn't as evil as his father, lets him go like in canon. 2. The dragon Naruto becomes is instead Rage Shinran, brought about by wishing Goku back to life for the Saiyan saga. Like canon Rage, Naruto can use electric slime and also get bigger by absorbing electric energy. However, Naruto will be a bit more strategic about it and actually figure out more offensive strategies with his electric attacks, possibly using them to recreate lightning jutsu such as the Chidori. Also, this version of Rage will be aware of his weakness to water and ask Bulma for help with that. Bulma in turn will figure out a chemical that Naruto can use that will make him less combustible with water, and can even use the lightning from rainstorms to power himself up. He'd join up with Goku just as he's taking on Vegeta and help him beat the Saiyan Prince. I can even see Naruto using his ability to get bigger to match Vegeta's great ape form. Challenge. Noun, a call to take part in a contest or competition. AK, I'm asking if anyone else wants to do this story because I can't even though I want to. Naruto the Shadow Dragon. Naruto Uzumaki, Jinchuriki to the Nine-Tailed Fox, son of Minato Namikaze and Kushina Uzumaki, reincarnation of the youngest child of the Sage of the Six Paths, and hero of the Fourth Shinobi War, was dying. After a long and difficult battle involving the blonde and his allies fighting numerous reanimated ninja, White Setsu clones, Obito Uchiha, Madara Uchiha, and finally the Demoness Kagaya, Naruto's body was finally succumbing to his injuries and exhaustion. It was only due to both his status, bloodline, and stubborn personality that he'd held on this long, as most people would have succumbed long ago. Unfortunately, everyone has a limit and Naruto has both reached and surpassed his. With what little strength he had left, Naruto said farewell to all of his friends and companions, encouraging them to move on without him to bring about a better world, and by the end of it all there wasn't a dry eye to be seen. Confident that the world was in capable hands, Naruto passed with no regrets. But he did give the world one last gift. Utilizing his abilities as a sage, as well as the powers of Azura, Naruto's soul was able to live on after his body gave out. His disembodied soul then went around the planet, picking up any lingering negative energy that remained from the past few centuries of violence and bloodshed, taking them into himself to ensure that the world will be at peace at long last. Fulfilling his role as the child of prophecy, Naruto's soul then took the negative energy along with itself deep within the earth to make sure nothing else like the Shinobi World Wars ever happens again. And peace reigned throughout the world. Years passed, and the elemental nations prospered, no longer focusing on militant applications. The people were able to focus on other pursuits such as improving the technology in the world. Eventually the usage of both shinobi and chakra grew out of fashion in times of peace, and the hidden villages became bustling metropolises. The Bijou, feeling that their presence may at one point disturb the peace the humans had, decided to go off to parts unknown, and no one saw them for many years. People began to use technology more than chakra as it was easier and more available to use. Soon most forgot the old, violent ways, with people only speaking of ninjas as myths and legends, only a few holding on to some of the shinobi way. While chakra itself fell out of use, people did still utilize the physical aspects of it from time to time, usually those heavily involved in the martial arts. But it gained a new name, ki. Throughout all this, Naruto's soul remained nestled in the earth, absorbing any build-ups of negative energy to prevent it from harming humanity. Then, one day everything changed. A new guardian for the earth, called Kami, had decided to make 7 magical orbs called Dragon Balls that, when gathered, could grant a person one wish. He used powerful abilities to create the Dragon Balls, many of which were connected to the earth itself. Said powers were like a beacon to Naruto's wandering soul, like it was nature chakra, drawing it in like a magnet. As the Dragon Balls were created, the negative energy Naruto's soul was distributed amongst them, but the majority held on to the ninja's soul as it was sucked into one of the orbs. Years pass. People using the wish-granting abilities to make their fondest wish come true. Some wishes were for beneficial reasons, others evil, and others completely ridiculous. With each wish, the negative energy in them grew stronger, especially in the Dragon Ball containing Naruto, and the majority of the negative energy. Finally, one day the negative energy in Naruto's Dragon Ball overflowed and took shape, which is where our story truly takes place. Divergent Point, Naturon Shinran. Son Goku, the current hero of the planet Earth, had finally defeated the great evil known as Demon King Piccolo. The monkey-tailed boy, at only 15 years old, had gone on many strange and wonderful adventures, most focusing on the magical wish-granting Dragon Balls. However, the Demon King was his most difficult opponent to date, and his victory came at a cost. His friend Krillin, his Master Roshi, and many other fighters were killed by Piccolo and his minions during the struggle. Even the eternal dragon Shinran was destroyed by the monster. After Piccolo's defeat, Goku was determined to find a way to save his friends and sought out the creator of the Dragon Balls, Kami, in order to wish those killed by King Piccolo back. This seemingly innocent wish is what caused the negative energy trapped within the 7-star ball, along with the soul of the Earth's previous hero, to be released. After the balls had scattered once, they were used to revive the victims of Piccolo. If one were to find the stone ball that was once the 7-star ball, they would see black smoke start to leak out of it. The smoke condensed into a small cloud over the ball, getting denser and denser before it started to take shape. Once the smoke cleared, a strange creature was seen standing with the stone dragon ball at its feet. The creature is small, brown, and pig-like, with black horns pointing out the back of his head and a thick reptilian tail. It also has long claws on its fingers and toes and walks in a bipedal fashion, giving a huge yawn while stretching out his arms. The being that housed the soul of Naruto Uzumaki took in his surroundings with growing confusion. What happened? Wasn't I dead? And why does my voice sound weird? Naruto questioned as he looked around, noting his voice sounded different than he remembered. It was then he noticed that he stood about as tall as the small bushes around him, causing him to act accordingly. And why the hell am I a pipsqueak? He sobbed out while getting on his hands and knees, a cloud of depression over his head. After pulling himself out of his momentary funk, he noticed something was off about his body. Naruto noticed that his body was noticeably chubbier than before, as well as covered in light brown skin, and his hands and feet had sharp claws instead of fingers. Noticing a lake nearby, Naruto ran over to it, noticing his running was a lot more awkward than it was before thanks to his squat legs, and looked into the reflective surface of the water. He stared at his animalistic face for a few minutes before he crossed his arms, squinted his eyes, and nodded to himself. Alright, I must be dreaming. That's gotta be it though, gurgle. I didn't know you could get hungry in your dreams. Naruto practically giggled to himself, thinking he had it all figured out. He then looked across the small lake and noticed an apple tree near the bank. Grinning, he said, well, if I eat food in my dreams, then I shouldn't be hungry in them, yeah? He reasoned as he got ready to cross the lake to get to the fruit. However, instead of walking across the surface like he could do in life, Naruto found himself falling face first into icy cold water. He came up sputtering, GCK. That's super cold. The transformed ninja then swam across the lake like a bullet, though a lot more awkwardly than he could before, and came up onto the shore shivering. Okay, maybe this isn't a dream, but what does this all mean? He pondered as he tried to dry himself off. Naruto thought hard on what the heck was happening to him, but his growling stomach halted his thinking process. Figuring he'd be able to concentrate better with a full stomach, Naruto once again turned his attention to the apple trees, channeling his energy once more. Naruto went to the tree to walk up it to get to the out-of-reach food. Unfortunately for the boy, this attempt was met with as much failure as his water-walking attempt, causing him to fall backwards right on his head. OW. Okay, definitely not dreaming, Naruto yelped as he rolled around on the dirt clutching his aching skull. He then sits up and nurses the bump on his head. Man, this day just keeps getting better. If only I had an audience watching, then this would be just perfect. Naruto spat as he got back up, spying the fruit that was so close yet oh so far away. Naruto sighed before looking at his now clawed hands. A light bulb seemed to go off in his mind, and the changed ninja then used the sharp digits to scale up the side of the tree, reaching the branches. Naruto was able to plop down on one of them, and grabbed a decent-sized apple before happily munching away on it. After he had his fill, Naruto then began to seriously think about his situation. Okay Naruto, think, you're in unknown territory, your body has been changed somehow, and for some reason you can't seem to use chakra. So how did this happen and where do I go from here? He mused as he went over what he knew. Going back to his sage training, Naruto started to meditate to see if he could gather his thoughts and maybe remember how all this happened. As he meditated, flashes of what has happened since his sealing went through his mind, forming a picture to his situation. Opening his eyes, Naruto looked at his paw-like hands. So the world doesn't know about chakra anymore and instead uses an energy called ki. I was born again when the Dragon Balls I was sealed and gained too much negative energy. And the world I once lived in has completely changed, he thought out loud before a sweat drop formed on his head. If anyone told me that, I'd think they were a few ramen noodles short of a bowel. Either that or someone was forcibly trying to write me into the plot of some adventure story. Still though, he looked at his hands again as they gained a faint glow. It looks like my chakra was replaced with ki. But it doesn't feel like mine is really strong. I wonder if I can use it like I saw those other guys use, like Goku or Tien or that creepy King Piccolo? Only one way to find out, I guess. Naruto looked down at the ground beneath him that, while not too far away, was still a distance for his smaller form, so it would definitely hurt if he fell. Focusing his ki energy like he saw Tien and Piccolo do, Naruto took a deep breath and hopped off the branch he was on. Instead of plummeting like a stone, Naruto hovered in the air like a feather. Noticing he wasn't falling, Naruto looked down and saw he was flying, causing a grin to adorn his animalistic face. Whoa! Awesome, I can fly! Naruto cheered as he attempted to fly around, attempted being the key word as his efforts almost looked like a newborn turkey trying to fly still. Naruto was psyched on being able to go through the air like old man Tsuchikage. Sensing he was losing balance, Naruto shakily lowered himself to the ground with a soft plop. Now let's see. Naruto started as he gathered his ki into his palm. The energy glowed a bright yellow color before a small ball formed in his palm like a raisingan but weaker looking. Giving a flick of his wrist, Naruto sent the energy blast over to a different tree. There was a small explosion when it made contact, but when the smoke cleared it showed the tree was largely undamaged. Giving a disappointed sigh at how weak he now was, Naruto started to walk off while pondering his next move. Alright, I'm here now, so there's no real point on pondering the what-ifs on what happened. The best thing I can do is to try to protect this world like I did before. Maybe I can help that Goku kid. He seemed like an okay guy. Kinda like how I was back in the day. Wow, that made me sound old. Never saying that again. My biggest problem though is I don't really have a strong grasp on how ki works. And this new body is really weak compared to how I was before, so the stuff I do know won't help much. Maybe I should look for a sensei to get me back to my old strength and help me figure out more of that ki stuff. And I really need to stop talking to myself. Naruto then started going over his options on who could possibly want to train him as he was now. His first thought went to Kami, the creator of the Dragon Balls. The only problem with that was he lived on a lookout far above the Earth's surface. Not only was Naruto unsure if his mediocre flying abilities would allow him to get that high, but he also knew from his most recent memories that the Guardian of Earth was currently training Goku to take on the last spawn of King Piccolo in 3 years' time. The latter of which was something he himself hoped to be ready for when the time came, but wasn't sure how he'd be able to get his pathetic body to that level without any of his old techniques. Maybe he'd be able to find a way to use ki to replicate some of his chakra techniques? Though that brought him back to square one on finding a teacher. Finally he remembered seeing that pervy old man, Roshi, who was supposedly a martial arts master. While Naruto was skeptical on being taught by another old pervert, he figured that if he wanted to at least learn the basics of ki, then the turtle hermit was his best bet. So with a goal in mind, the reborn shinobi headed out, hoping to find some civilization where he could find some clue as to where Roshi was at. He walked through the woods for 3 days, stopping only to eat, sleep, and do his business. Along the way he tried to use his ki more to see if he could strengthen it, and maybe see if he could replicate some of his old chakra moves. Unfortunately his success was limited, because while ki was similar to chakra in how it flowed through the body, there were several differences. One of the big ones was that ki was less versatile than chakra. While chakra could be used to shape the very elements, ki was limited to augmenting the user's body and projecting it in blasts. Another difference was that ki wasn't as closely linked to the body's life force as chakra was, and while some attacks like the ki koho used the user's life force, the energy itself was less of a mix of spiritual and physical energies, relying more on the physical realm. So while ki was powerful in its own right, it was just too different from chakra for Naruto to get a complete grasp of naturally. That didn't stop him from trying though. He'd sometimes fly to get a better grasp of it. He moved from baby turkey to wounded duck in ability, and would try to strengthen his ki blasts by targeting random objects in the forest. He could now leave a slight scorch mark on them, but would only hurt as much as a bee sting when used on a living being. It wasn't much, but it was progress. On the 3rd day, Naruto was kneeling beside a river that ran through the forest while taking a drink. He was confident he'd find civilization soon, maybe in another day or two. Suddenly, Naruto picked up a rustling noise from a nearby bush. "Hello?" The shadow dragon called out hesitantly, hoping a hiker or something was passing through the area and could point him in the right direction. "I'm kinda lost, so I'd really appreciate any help you could give me. I won't hurt you, I swear." Gulp. Naruto trailed off as what came out of the woods wasn't a human being but a wolf pack. The leader was an impressive specimen, around Akamaru's adult height with a scar over one eye, while the other members of the pack closely flanked him, judging from their drooling mouths and hungry eyes. They hadn't eaten in a while, and Naruto was in their territory, and he probably looked like a tasty snack. "Oh, nice wolves, you don't want to eat me, I taste terrible. Ask anyone." Naruto laughed nervously as he backed away from the snarling wolves. Noticing that he was being closed in, Naruto panicked. With a shout, he sent a ki blast right into the leader's face. The wolf yelped, but quickly started to growl angrily as he and the other wolves continued to advance. Naruto paled, and he gulped. "Oh, crap." Turning, he quickly tried to fly away. While his flying still wasn't overly graceful, it was still enough that he was able to gain a bit of distance on the pursuing pack. Turning, Naruto gave a sigh of relief. "Man, that was a close OW." He yelped as his head collided with a tree that was in his path. He plummeted to the ground where he lay for a second before sitting up and rubbing the newly formed lump on his head. Ugh. Note to self: look where you are flying, you idiot. Before Naruto could completely recover his bearings, however, the wolf pack caught up with him and the carnivores quickly surrounded the tiny dragon. Naruto started to sweat nervously, and before he could try to take off again, the lead wolf leapt at him with his claws and fangs bared. Naruto screamed in fright as he closed his eyes, wondering after all he's gone through if this was how it would end, with him becoming some wolf snack. As the wolf made contact with him, however, a defense mechanism was activated deep within Naruto's subconscious. Instead of striking flesh like he was expecting, the scarred wolf's paws sank into Naruto's body like it was made of quicksand. The wolf yelped in confusion as his legs also started to sink into the strange creature's body, and he quickly tried to back away, but it was too late. In a matter of moments, the entire wolf was absorbed into the shadow dragon. Naruto's body in response starts to swell outwards as it takes on a grayish color. The other wolves start to back up in both confusion and fear as both their leader was gone, and suddenly the thing they saw as prey was becoming larger by the second. Soon, Naruto's new form was revealed. In shape he was similar to his previous form, but he was now gray in color, and his claws had become black. The whiskers on his face had lengthened, resembling his old birthmarks somewhat, while his muzzle has lengthened and his muscles have become more pronounced. The most noticeable change, however, was his height, as he was now around 50 feet tall. Also, if one were to look closely, they'd see what looked like a scar tattoo over his one eye. Naruto was confused after a few moments of silence, as not only did he feel no pain from being mauled, but his body was coursing with power that he hadn't felt since he first unlocked Sage Mode. Cracking an eye open to see what was going on, Naruto was shocked to see that he was now eye level with most treetops. Looking down, Naruto noticed that not only had his body changed but now he easily towered over the wolves that had hunted him minutes ago. Giving a grin on his muzzle, Naruto brought a massive foot forward and stomped hard on the ground, causing a miniature earthquake that had the wolves scrambling, looking up at the behemoth. The wolves could only quake in fear. Naruto crossed his arms confidently in front of himself and simply ordered, "Get lost." With that, the wolves bolted with only dust clouds showing they were there. Naruto gave a rumbling laugh before getting serious. Looking over his changed body once more, he asked aloud in confusion, "How'd this happen? One moment I'm a pipsqueak about to become a chew toy, the next I'm big enough to squash a house. And my ki feels weird, stronger than before but with something else." Looking down at a large boulder, Naruto fired a blast of ki at it. Unlike before, his attack went up in a huge fireball that reduced the boulder to pebbles. Too, he looked to the now smoking crater in surprise. That was definitely stronger than before. Again though, his ki felt weird. It almost felt like when he would borrow Kurama's chakra but not quite, thinking that it might work on the same principle. The newly formed giant got into a meditative position and concentrated on his inner mind. When Naruto next opened his eyes, he was surprised at what he saw. Instead of the familiar sewer or blank space of his mindscape, he was surrounded what almost looked like purple gummy spider webs. Looking down, he noticed he was in his smaller, less powerful form, navigating his way through the webs. He noticed a space where they all seemed to converge. When he reached the point, he was shocked to discover the wolf leader from earlier all tangled up in the webs. The wolf itself seemed out cold, and the webs around it seemed to hum with power. Briefly grasping one of the treads, Naruto confirmed that the web was taking ki from the wolf and adding it to the walls that represented Naruto's body. Sitting down, Naruto pondered what this meant. After a few hours of thinking, which was only a few seconds in the real world, he was able to come up with a theory. Back when that wolf attacked me, I felt my body react somehow like it knew what to do. Maybe it's some kind of way to protect me and give me strength by putting a person, animal, whatever, into my body and taking its ki to add to my own. But I feel way stronger than the wolf did, so maybe my body has some kind of function that multiplies that strength. I wish Shikamaru was here. He was good at figuring out this kind of crap. He momentarily ranted before continuing. It doesn't feel like this hurts the being I have in me, so maybe this ability kind of lets me become a Jinchuriki to anything? He frowned. I don't want to rely on other people's strength like this. But maybe I can use this to my advantage. Like, if I found a really bad but strong guy and trapped them in here, I would both be taking out a threat and making myself stronger to take on other threats. Yeah, that could work. Turning to the wolf, he said in an apologetic tone, "Sorry, Wolfie, but it looks like you're sticking around for a while. Don't worry though. As soon as I'm able to, I'll release you." With that, Naruto went back to the real world and found himself in his giant form again. Well, now it's time to go looking for Roshi again, Naruto announced with a grin before he frowned. Really gotta stop talking to myself, he muttered before stomping off into the wood with his determination to find the old master renewed. 1 week later, Master Roshi was reclining in a beach chair outside Kame House while wearing his favorite Hawaiian shirt and shorts, his turtle shell and staff placed on the ground beside him. It had been nearly 2 weeks since Goku defeated King Piccolo, and the Dragon Balls were used to revive himself, and those killed by the demon. Currently, Goku himself was training under Kami according to Shinran, and his 3 friends Yamcha, Krillin, Tien, and Kairatsu were doing their own training as well so they could meet up at the next World Martial Arts Tournament in 3 years. The old master had decided it was time to enjoy his retirement as he was confident that the current generation had already surpassed him, and was ready to defend the Earth when the need arises. So far it was just him, Turtle, and Launch living on his island paradise while Bulma and the others decided to go back to the city for now. Roshi gave a content sigh and contemplated what to do next. Should he take a nap and enjoy this glorious weather, watch a few workout videos starring his favorite sexy models, or try and peek on Launch while she changes and hope she doesn't sneeze? He could always, What's that sound? He muttered as his old but still sharp ears picked up a whistling sound. It almost sounded as if a large object was flying through the air at fast speeds. Squinting his eyes behind his sunglasses, Roshi made out a small speck in the distant sky that seemed to be moving. Soon, the speck grew larger and larger as the object got closer. Roshi got up from his chair and grabbed his staff and shell, preparing himself for anything as the object wasn't shaped like any plane he'd ever seen. With a burst of speed, the object landed hard on the beach a short distance from Roshi, kicking up a cloud of dust. As the dust cleared to reveal the figure that landed, Roshi's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "My, you're a big fella, ain't ya?" he commented idly while on the inside he was sweating a bit. This figure, which looked like a giant gray mole or pig, was easily as big as Goku was when he turned into that giant ape monster during his first tournament. If the creature turned out to be hostile, he'd be hard-pressed to defeat it. So much for enjoying his retirement. "Are you Master Roshi?" the creature asked in a deep, rumbling voice. "I am, and what can I do for you?" Roshi asked cautiously, keeping an eye open in case of attack. Instead, the giant grinned and said happily, "Oh, thank all that is ramen. I've been searching for nearly a week for you now, and you wouldn't believe all the hoops I've had to get through. Seriously, it was such a pain when those cities I went to started shooting at me before I could even ask about you. Anyway." The creature calmed down a bit before surprising the old man when he, Roshi assumed it was male, got down on his knees and bowed before he said in a sincere tone, "My name is Naruto Uzumaki, and I would like to become your apprentice. Will you accept?" 3. If Roshi wasn't surprised before, he most definitely was now. Schooling his emotions, Roshi inquired, "Well now, that's certainly an interesting request. I figured a big guy like yourself wouldn't need any extra strength. Most tend to think that is enough. Why do you want to be trained by me?" Naruto lifted his head and answered, "I've recently been able to unlock my ki, but I'm not well trained in it. Plus, while I'm pretty strong naturally, I want to learn how to better improve myself so I can protect those who can't protect themselves. I heard about you and how you are one of the best martial arts masters alive, so I thought if anyone could help me, it's you." He had been thinking of how to answer a question like that since he started out on his journey and figured this was the best answer he could come up with without going into full detail. Roshi used his honed senses and could tell this Naruto Uzumaki was telling the truth, though it did feel that he was hiding something. Well, he wasn't one to pry as he taught people for less noble-sounding reasons than this creature gave. Heck, he taught Goku just because he knew the boy's grandfather, and that he wanted to get stronger for the sake of getting stronger. It was rare to have people say they want to help others right off the bat. Still though, he wished to test this beast's resolve and decided to play hard to get. Roshi waved a dismissive hand and said, "Sorry my boy, but I'm retired, plus I don't think you'd be able to handle my training. It's quite difficult, you know." Naruto gained a resolved look in his eyes. "I don't care how tough your training is. I'll go through it no matter what, and I never go back on my word." "Please teach me, sensei," he asked while bowing again. Roshi mentally grinned. This one had determination. That was good. It would serve him well in the long run. Still, one more push wouldn't hurt. Turning away, he said, "Nope, my mind is made up. Go bother someone else." If he was looking, he would have noticed the mischievous glint in the dragon's eyes. Pulling out a small, relative to his size, pile of papers from somewhere, Naruto tossed them in front of the hermit. Roshi looked down and noticed the front page had this printed on it. "Make out Paradise," the manuscript. Curious, Roshi picked up the papers and started to read through them. He had barely gone through 2 pages when he blushed and gained a torrential nosebleed. Dabbing his nose with a tissue, Roshi turned to a smug-looking Naruto with a lecherous grin. "I take it you like? I have 2 other volumes on me that can be yours if you train me," Naruto stated, mentally patting himself on the back for having the foresight to write down all he remembered from Jiraiya's works to act as an incentive for the other super pervert. It was a pain writing on an old typewriter with claws the size of tree trunks, but it would hopefully be worth it. Trying to regain his composure, and failing due to the huge blush on his face and the pieces of tissue shoved up his nose, Roshi declared, after careful consideration, "I have decided to accept your request for training. I hope you're ready though, Naruto, because it will most likely be some of the hardest training you have ever done in your life." Naruto gave a huge smile and shot the man a thumb's claws up before saying boldly, "I wouldn't have it any other way, sensei. Believe it."